Stay with us. Today, we're going to discuss 500 prophecies. And those 500 prophecies happen to be listed in a book called Ancient Prophecies Revealed. 500 prophecies listed in the order of when they were fulfilled. And if you watch Prophecy Watchers very often, you know Dr. Ken Johnson. He sits in occasionally to talk about his latest scholarly discoveries. Ken, welcome back to Prophecy Watchers.
Thank you.
500 prophecies listed in the order of when they were fulfilled. I got to tell you, this book has become very popular, and I appreciate the way you have put this together, because people are interested in prophecy when prophecy is made easy to understand. Mm-hmm. But it's a big turnoff when you have to try to figure out something and you can't quite put all the pieces together. And so let's talk about these 500 prophecies. How did you happen to put this book together?
Well, the main idea behind it was I've run across a lot of books on the prophecies of Daniel, Zechariah, things like that. And people have the idea of it's somehow Sunday school logic. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have anything to do with real life. So I wanted to take all of the prophecies out of all the different books of the Bible, put them in chronological order. So you could begin to see the things you were taught in Sunday school, go all the way up through the church age into the modern Israeli age, and notice the 50-some prophecies recently fulfilled. And then look at the future and begin to get the idea, wait a minute, this stuff is real, really real.
Yeah, I like that, really real. This is I think, a breakthrough moment. And if you've never had one, hang on. Because you do. At some point in your life as a Christian, you have one of those moments when you say, wow, this stuff is really real. It's not just theoretical. It's the real thing. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about a kind of a breakthrough moment that brought you where you are in 500 prophecies listed in the order of when they were fulfilled. Mm-hmm. This is fascinating. Let's go through a few of these. And you start back with the Exodus, and you then proceed up through the rise of Babylon, Messiah's first coming. You have sort of an outline form as you go through this book. Mm-hmm. You talk about future events, post-2008. So basically going through the book is going through a long timeline.
Yeah, we went through Daniel chapter 11, for instance, gives us a good chronology from 536 BC all the way up through the Roman expulsion and then when the Antichrist comes. So we actually have a timeline from 536 BC to 1948, and that's just the beginning.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting. Daniel 11:3 says, "And a mighty king shall stand up, that shall rule with great dominion, and do according to his will." And everybody agrees that's Alexander the Great, mm-hmm. Around 330 BC, 331. And so you have sort of a date-time statement here in the Bible. You can put a date on that, and then start moving forward. Mm-hmm. And I assume you've done that.
Oh yeah, every single one of those, it'll mention somebody who's ruling, married someone's sister or cousin, and then had a war at a certain city. And when you go back and just look up the history, you can identify every one of those people and every one of those cities, all the way up through the Roman destruction of the temple,
and
which is actually married in there. Yeah.
By the way, when he did, he saved you a lot of work. I guarantee it. Because I've heard a lot of Bible scholars talk about Daniel 11. They always say, don't try, folks. This is too complicated. Don't even try. But you did. Mm-hmm. That's what I like about it.
It's important.
In terms of chronology, it may be one of the most important chapters in the whole Bible. Mm-hmm. And as you turn the page, you come to the end of Daniel 11. And verse 36 says, "And the king shall do according to his will." That's yet future.
Right. We get all the way up to 1948. Israel comes back, and then there's some sort of a king that arises, which is the Antichrist. So that tells us the Antichrist comes sometime after 1948. That's correct, because he's not here yet.
He's not here yet. Is he alive?
Maybe. There's another prophecy in there that shows that he comes sometime after 1956, after the time that Egypt no longer has kings. So, and there's 2 or 3 other prophecies in there like that. All of them are easy to see now that the time has come and went.
Yeah, looking back and putting things together is always easier. You really have to see Ken's book to believe it. I mean, looking at the table of contents is just like reading a timeline. But the documentation for the timeline is something that has taken you a long, long time, right?
Yeah, that probably took me longer than any other book to put together. It was well over a year.
So I'm looking now at types of prophecies. You've got a page here which I find interesting. You're talking about literal prophecy, timeline prophecy, inscription, symbolic, typological, dual purpose, twisted. You list 7 different types of prophecies. In fact, you have a page here talking about how to discern prophetic truth.
Yeah, we always look for something that sets a date or something that tells us a certain person will do a certain thing, like the Messiah born in Bethlehem. But there's a lot of other prophecies in there where you put a string of names together and the names form a sentence, and that's a prophecy. There's a quad word prophecy where you've got 4 words, 3 of them give you one prophecy, 4 of them give you a different prophecy. There's actually one prophecy in Habakkuk that is a musical prophecy. You have to know music to understand the symbols in it. God is amazing in the stuff that he's put all the way through the scriptures.
And you haven't even talked about the subscript, numerics, alphabetic lineups.
No.
I mean, there's so many things that are buried within the text of the Bible.
Right.
That once you begin to look at these, you think of the Lord in an entirely different way. It's just, you have, as we've said a minute ago, a really real moment when you say, not only is God real, but he is amazing.
Amazing, yes.
So let's go through some of these prophecies now. I'm passing the introduction, and I come to the creation, the period of the creation, to the Egyptian Exodus. So you go all the way back and you come forward. Let's talk about that. Where do you start in the creation, and how long do you go before you get to the Exodus?
Well, there's a few things in there in the pre-flood world, like we get a few ideas from Jasher, from Josephus, from other historical writings. That they understood the world would be destroyed twice, once by a flood, once by fire. Not sure which one comes first, and then it goes on up from there. And of course, Enoch gave a few prophecies, and then it goes forward. But the main prophecies that everybody focused on in the ancient times was God's promise to Abraham that after 400 years or 430 years, that his descendants would come into a land, and it would start that whole prophecy about a nation being special, that the Messiah would come. Then you've got all the prophecies about the Messiah, all the way up through that 400 silent year time period, and then finally the Messiah is coming.
You have that broken down into 2 BC, Messiah's birth and childhood, all the way up to AD 32, Messiah's resurrection. 2 BC to AD 32. So you have a nice compact little timeline in there. And I remember years ago, people, there's a great debate, and I'm talking about 4 or 5 decades ago, about the date of the crucifixion. And it ranged all the way from 28 to 34. There's a wide period in there, but you have brought it down to 32. How'd you do that?
Well, one thing, the Dead Sea Scrolls give you clues on it. The mathematics give you clues on it. Daniel chapter 9 tells you from the decree to rebuild Jerusalem is exactly so many days to when the Messiah is cut off. And those all come out to AD 32. And I think some of the problems that come with it is when you try to look at our dates and go backwards. The Gregorian calendar, for instance, in the Middle Ages was off by 11 days. If it would have been off 7 days, it would be exactly the same in a week. But now our weeks are shifted over. Question is, was it correct then, or is it correct now? Or was neither one correct? So calendars are a tricky thing. Whatever calendar you start on, if you have a date and then you go forward so many days, it comes out to another date. So you should be able to figure those out.
We're talking about Ken's book here, Ancient Prophecies Revealed, 500 prophecies listed in the order of when they were fulfilled. And this is, you talk about a handbook, talk about a book to have it at your elbow at all times, you know, when you're talking about Bible prophecy, Bible history, or if you're simply talking about the simple believability of what's written in the Bible. The Bible, as many people have said over the years, is a self-confirming manuscript.
Mm-hmm.
But you have it here in a clear form, so that really there isn't much doubt about the way things are happening.
Yeah, the church fathers taught that you should learn about prophecy fulfilled in your lifetime for the purpose of witnessing, and it is a very powerful witness. So you go all the way up through the church age. Most people don't realize there were a good 20 or so prophecies fulfilled through the church age.
Mm-hmm.
And by that I mean up until the time when the Israelis came back in 1948. Since that time we've had over 50 prophecies fulfilled, some just a few years ago.
For as long as I've studied the Bible, I've marveled at the way prophecy came together in the 20th century, starting 1897, when the famous Declaration of Israel's statehood was made, and at the First Zionist Congress. Mm-hmm. There was a prediction in 1897 that within 50 years Israel would be a state, and guess what? It was a state 50 years later in 1947-48. Mm-hmm. And things like that have just impressed me for years. In other words, prophecy is still very active in our day if we have eyes to see and ears to hear.
Right. Yeah, even if you don't believe that there are modern day prophets, the old prophets predicted things all the way through. There wasn't a time that it stopped. There's a lot of things that happen with Israel. Just like we get the date of the Messiah being put to death in 32 AD, we get from Daniel, it's kind of cryptic, but we get another prophecy about Israel coming back as a state in 1948. And again, it happened at the date it was supposed to, and all the things that followed and all the other things that are happening.
And that was from which book?
Daniel.
Daniel. So Daniel has enough information that if you know what to look at, you can calculate 1948.
Yes, just like you do. Now he's very clear with the 32 AD one. There's going to be a decree, so many days later, Messiah cut off. Yeah. So that's fairly easy to look at. You just got to get your calendar math right.
Right.
But then there's another cryptic prophecy about from a certain time forward, Israel comes back for the second time, like Isaiah says, for the second time.
Well, let's talk about modern Israel in terms of time periods. You have 1948, rebirth of Israel, 1948, the four craftsmen, 1948, the seven shepherds, 1949, Yemenite Jews. In other words, you have a lot of these prophecies, modern fulfillments of prophecy, broken down yearly, which I've never seen done before.
Mm-hmm. That's why I wanted to do the book, because I had never seen it done either. And it's important that you see it all together in one. I love charts, so in one chart where you can see all these like 20-some prophecies in that first year. That's pretty amazing.
And nobody else has gone to the trouble to put this thing in readable form, which is amazing. What do we have here? 1949, Yemenite Jews returned. 1951 to 2005, Ashdod, Ashkelon, and Gaza. Now, those are regions in Israel. 1951 to 2005. So you've got prophecy being fulfilled right up to 2005, which is pretty close to where we're living now.
Right. The book stopped when I published it in 2008. But yeah, there were certain prophecies in the Old Testament about Ashdod and Ashkelon being just fields for shepherds. And then all of a sudden they get rebuilt at a certain point and then become extremely large cities. And they're like the fifth, I think, and eighth largest cities in Israel. Mm-hmm. So the prophecies are very specific.
Now, let's talk about the future.
Are you sure?
Well, I don't know. You have one here, future events, and then, as you say, you put this together in 2008, and you have a number of very specific prophecies here, 4, 5, and 6 shepherds. West Bank becomes a sovereign state. Lebanese-Jordanian war. Sephardic Jews return. And then you go all the way up to the destruction of Damascus and Syria. Now, that hasn't happened yet.
No, none of those have.
None of those have happened, but you've got them laid in here. Any clue as to how that's unfolding?
The exact order, not exactly from Scripture, but like some of those are from Obadiah. There's supposed to be a war where Israel takes southern Lebanon and keeps it. They take Gilead.
Right.
At that point, they would already have Bashan, which is the Golan Heights, and they do. And then the Negev is colonized. People from the tribe of Benjamin are found and make aliyah to Israel. And several of those come together to paint a wonderful picture of the things that are happening.
Let's read a very commonly quoted prophecy that right at the end of the Old Testament, Malachi chapter 4, and it talks about the Son of Righteousness arising with healing in his wings. And then you come down to the last 3 verses in the Old Testament. Remember ye the law of Moses my servant, which I commanded unto him in Horeb for all Israel with the statutes and judgments. Behold, I'll send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And he shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. So you have, right at the end of the Old Testament, you have Moses and Elijah mentioned. And Elijah is supposed to come before the great and terrible day of the Lord. So, of course, that's become a very big part of the Jewish calendar. The Passover Seder features, the pouring of the cup for Elijah, and going to the door to see if he may be out there. Did I hear someone knocking? And you have one of the little kids go to the door and open it up. And no, Papa, he's not out here. Okay, come back. But every year they're watching for Elijah.
Right.
So what do you have anything on that any hot news about the coming of Elijah?
Not directly. I mean, the 2 witnesses do come sometime. We're told approximately when they are in relation to the 7-year tribulation period, but we don't have a date for that either. But it's interesting to see embedded in all the rituals, the Passover, Seder, and the other rituals of the 7 festivals, prophecy, and then how important it is for everybody to constantly remember eventually Elijah will come. And you need to pay attention to him because he will bring you into a covenant with Messiah. So it's interesting to see that. I mean, now with the Dead Sea Scrolls coming out, more and more of those, there's actually more information on the school of Elijah and the school of the prophets that are coming out. So maybe we'll get more information in the near future.
I assume you're watching at all times.
Definitely.
For new information that would come up. Again, it's called Ancient Prophecies Revealed. And this book is different than I think any other prophecy book I've ever seen, because to list 500 prophecies in the order of when they were fulfilled is just, I think you're doing a service to anybody who studies the Bible. Because you can get pretty confused if you look at these things in a disparate fashion, go to one part of the Bible and then another part, and then it's very easy to get mixed up about what happens when. And you've gone to the trouble to document Messiah's first coming, the Messiah to the great dispersion, starting with the fall of Rome, and then you come back to modern Israel. And then you go to future events. But all of this is biblical. What's the most impressive thing as you study the Bible or Bible prophecy? What do you always come back to? What really is drawing you at this time?
The prophecies between the second return of Israel, which is 1948, and the beginning of the tribulation period. There's some 80 prophecies about the tribulation period, the Antichrist, and then there's a lot about the millennial reign. But most people kind of neglect that period in between. And we've had 50 prophecies revealed since they've become a nation. And then all these other little prophecies, like the destruction of Damascus hasn't happened yet. But it says specifically Damascus will be destroyed because of what the children of Israel do. So it's connected somehow. And then there's prophecies about Iran, prophecies about fire, prophecies about those things. So I would like to get, even if I don't have dates, get those in some sort of a chronological order to understand, to know what we're supposed to look for.
Well, This is all fascinating because when you talk about Damascus, well, what runs through my mind at that very moment is the Russians have recently built a large air base near Damascus. A number of Russian soldiers were discovered in the area of Damascus recently. Some rather heavy-duty artillery has been fired southward toward Israel from the vicinity of Damascus. You've got the Russians in there, you've got the Iranians with their surrogates, Hezbollah, and you've got so much tumult and chaos and weaponry of all kinds flowing in there. Then when you say something about the destruction of Damascus, it looks like current events.
Yeah, it is. When you pull it all together, one of the things that I draw in the book really well is that in the tribulation, or in the millennial reign rather, you've got the border of Israel being up here. Right now, the border of Israel is right here. And there's a time period it talks about where the border is right here in between. So there's kind of an expansion. So there's another set of prophecies that take place before the tribulation period, or the millennial reign. And so with those, you see them taking southern Lebanon. You see the destruction of Damascus. You see the prophecy of Psalm 83 being fulfilled. So there's a lot of, maybe it's all one big war, but there's a major thing coming where Israel expands its territory. And so it's interesting to see how that unfolds.
We're talking with Ken Johnson, who has authored many books and covering many subjects in the Bible, and rather obscure subjects that other people seem not to touch at all. But this one you must have. It's Ancient Prophecies Revealed, 500 prophecies listed in the order of when they were fulfilled. By the way, Ken's going to be speaking at our second annual Blessed Hope Prophecy Conference, October 12th through the 14th, 2018. Any hint on what you'll be talking about, or is it something that you haven't even discovered yet?
Well, you never know, but no, there's a couple of new Dead Sea Scrolls I want to kind of introduce to the public.
Hey, that prophecy conference is going to be here before you know it. Our second annual Blessed Hope Prophecy Forum is not far away, and here to talk about it, Bob Ulrich.
The Prophecy Watchers are coming back to Norman, Oklahoma, October 12th through 14th, 2018. We're going to be back with 30 of the leading names in Bible prophecy. I'm sure you recognize many of the names: Gary Stearman, Tommy Ice, L.A. Marzulli, David Reagan, Jan Markell, Bill Koenig, Don Perkins, Andy Woods, Gary Frazier, Bill Salas. It's literally one of the biggest one-of-a-kind prophecy conferences in the world today.
It is, Bob, in a year, the year 2018, which just happens to be prophetically important.
30 speakers delivering over 60 messages. You can register for this great event at prophecywatchers.com, or you can call our ministry toll-free at 888-722-0008.
Now, let's go on and kind of draw this thing to a conclusion, because I know a lot of people will want to get this book once they've heard about what's in it. If you had to talk about Ancient Prophecies Revealed, what's the most interesting part of this book?
I'm always drawn to the current prophecies, because you can use those to witness. The last 50, the next ones, the Jordanian-Syrian war coming up, the destruction of Damascus. Those things, I think, are probably the main thing to look at. Everybody knows about Damascus,
right?
But the war where they take southern Lebanon, I think, is a key, and colonizing the Negev are two things we can specifically look for to occur in the near future.
I'd like to take just a moment and show you a package. Now, as you know, we here at Prophecy Watchers put things in packages. And we have what's called the Power of Prophecy package. 3 Ps, easy to remember. And this includes several of Ken's books: The Ancient Church Fathers, Ancient Prophecies Revealed, The Rapture, The End Times, the Ancient Book of Daniel, and finally, the Ancient Testaments of the Patriarchs. By the way, this particular book has been getting a lot of action. Once people find out what this thing is about, and once they read it and the word gets out, we are finding this to be a very popular book. We're calling it again the Power of Prophecy package. And these books, there are 6 of them, can be yours for a gift of $75, free shipping anywhere in the U.S., and that's a considerable saving when you buy the package. Call the 800 number on your screen right now and ask for the Power of Prophecy package. And remember, free shipping anywhere in the U.S., your gift of $75 will greatly help us doing the work right here at Prophecy Watchers, and will constitute a savings for you buying a number of Ken's books all at the same time. You can find them on our Prophecy Watchers website. Scroll down the online bookstore to Ken Johnson's name. Look for the Power of Prophecy package. Now, we have just a few moments to go here, and I want to conclude with this book, which, again, I wish I could convey to you how much work has gone into this book. I'm looking here at page 60, and it says, Date of Prophecy. Heading at the top of the page, prophecies surrounding the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus. And you have, and I can't even count how many there are, all accompanied by predictive prophecies and fulfilled prophecies. You go from, for example, Matthew to Matthew in one, Isaiah to Matthew in another one, Deuteronomy to Galatians. In other words, you bring things together that I would never think to bring together. And you've got how many, from 207 to 244, the number of prophecies that you have found to be fulfilled. Mm-hmm. If I had to do this, it would take me weeks, maybe months.
It takes a long time.
And you've already done it.
Yeah, I wanted you to see where the prophecy is, if it's fulfilled in Scripture, right beside it. If not, at least the date of when it was historically fulfilled.
So what I'm trying to say in my own halting way is this book is a real resource if you're at all interested in Bible prophecy. What are you working on right now? I don't want you to give away any secrets, of course, but...
I'm working on the School of the Prophets of Elijah, the history from the Dead Sea Scrolls, and a couple of other translations.
The Dead Sea Scrolls are suddenly being opened up. They're coming out now in quite a few publications, right? Mm-hmm. And you have, of course, being Ken Johnson, just dug into those things, and you're pulling all kinds of prophecy out.
Yeah, it's important that you understand what their theology is. The Pharisees rejected Messiah, the Essenes accepted Messiah. And it's extremely clear when you read their writings, and I just want to make that known to everyone.
And we'll be watching for Ken's books in days to come. Remember the Power of Prophecy package. Go to the online bookstore, and you will find it right there. I'm Gary Stearman. Glad you joined us today. Keep watching, everybody. We are. Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You can find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com, where you can sign up for our free email newsletter, or follow us at facebook.com/prophecywatchers. In the meantime, keep watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon.